Chapter 673. Blackbeard lay on the ground half dead, motionless. His body was badly mutilated and the long purple scars on his back were unbearable to look at. These horrifying scars were all over his body. That big bearded man can't be dead, right? If he's dead then how can we play? It's all father's fault. After a while little Yushi saw that Blackbeard refused to stand up no matter what, and couldn't help but whisper. Although her voice was as soft as a mosquito's, everyone present was an expert, and her voice clearly fell into everyone's ears. This little girl. Who did she get her temperament from? It's most likely Huey. Dustless couldn't help but ridicule in his heart. His gaze involuntarily looked at Blackbeard, fearing that this brat would suddenly stand up after hearing Yushi's complaints. These words were obviously teasing Blackbeard like a toy, and anyone would be incomparably depressed. Come here, Yushi. Dustless waved at Yushi. Nodding her head obediently, Yushi took light steps and cheerfully jumped over. The moment she passed by Blackbeard, Blackbeard's originally lifeless body suddenly moved. His rough hands seemed to be able to extend without limit, easily grabbing Yushi's uniform and nimbly pulling out the gun in his hand and aiming it at Yushi's temple. This sudden scene made Dustless and White Zhou stunned. Bastard Blackbeard, if you don't want to be dismembered into pieces, quickly let go of Miss. White Zhou roared with overflowing killing intent. Kik. Do you think I'm an idiot? If I really let go of this shield then I'll be dismembered into pieces just like just now, ouch. It hurts so much. Along with the twisting of his body, there was suddenly a piercing pain that penetrated deep into his bones. Blackbeard's face was as white as paper from the pain, and his whole body uncontrollably broke out in cold sweat. His eyes were filled with resentment and he stared at Dustless with cold eyes. If looks could kill, Dustless would have already become a human stick. You can actually stand up. It seems that your body structure is really different from a normal human's. Circling around the wounds all over Blackbeard's body, Dustless thoughtfully said. Her tone was light and gentle, giving people the feeling that she was taking a leisurely stroll in the afternoon. She did not sound anxious at all after her daughter was kidnapped. Your daughter is in my hands. You should be worried about her, not my body structure. If you don't want a bullet to open a bloody hole in her head, you better be obedient, Mr. Marine Admiral. Blackbeard warned with a hoarse voice. His sharp tone carried complacency and carefreeness. The battle had already reached this stage, yet he had finally turned the tables. Even though his methods were extremely despicable, he didn't care. It was enough to survive. Hearing this, Dustless shrugged and took a few steps back. Motherf ***, no matter what, you are still a captive. Hurry up and cry for me. Looking at the devilish brat, Blackbeard's head was burning with anger. As a hostage she should behave like a hostage. Even if she couldn't cry, she shouldn't be as excited as she was now, as if she had been injected with chicken blood. Woo woo woo, Yushi squeezed out 2 drops of sparkling tears from the corners of her eyes as she sobbed. Dustless, Sama, you should have the ability to save Mississippi. Why haven't you done it yet? White Zetsu urged. No matter how strong Blackbeard was, he was not Dustless's opponent. Even if Blackbeard was now 5 times or 10 times stronger, wanting to kill Dustless was only a fairy tale story. White Zetsu was also convinced that with Dustless's strength, he could definitely save Yushi easily. This little girl, what did Kaguya teach her over the years? Dustless just sighed to himself. The 2 drops of sparkling and translucent tears that fell to the ground were naturally seen by Wu Chen's eyes. Looking up, he saw Yushi's pair of small hands rubbing her big watery eyes. Coupled with her sobbing, it was a grief-stricken appearance. The only thing that was not complimentary was that even if the corners of her mouth were perfectly concealed, Dustless could still vaguely see Yushi's bright smile as if she had won a prize. Her acting was really clumsy, but her back was facing Blackbeard and her hands were covering, so Blackbeard didn't see it for the time being. Little Yushi obviously did it on purpose. Jia. Since you guys are so tactful, I will leave, see you later. Seeing Dustless and White Zetsu tactfully take a few steps back, Blackbeard laughed unscrupulously. His tone was full of joy of surviving a disaster. His pupils dilated, the corner of his eyes stopped at Dustless's body, as if he wanted to engrave his face in his heart forever and take it back 100 times in the future. Jia. Maybe I don't have to wait, I will immediately throw his daughter into the sea to feed the fish. Blackbeard laughed cruelly in his heart. He hated Dustless to the bone and wanted to drink his blood and eat his flesh. As long as he was sure that he could escape from Dustless's trap, he would kill his enemy's daughter. And hurt Yushi in the most cruel way. Dustless, Sama. Don't worry, that little girl did it on purpose. Waving his hand, Dustless interrupted White Zetsu's speech. Staring at the gradually dissipating black shadow, he casually found a big stone and sat down, his expression indifferent and calm. He casually pulled up a green grass from the ground and held it in his mouth. When Yushi comes back, remember to wake me up. I will sleep first. White Zetsu finished speaking. Dustless didn't wait for White Zetsu to react and fell into a nap, causing White Zetsu's mouth to twitch, but then he thought about it and felt relieved. Dustless could give him so many strange abilities. Yushi is a direct descendant of Dustless. Even if her battle strength was not strong, she would have countless strange abilities to defend herself. Kidnapping Yushi, wanting to use her to leave safely, this was completely Blackbeard's wishful thinking. In reality, he was asking for trouble. Chapter 674. Dustless was lying comfortably on a large stone. His breathing was unusually calm and clear. His breathing was very regular and natural. He was really not worried about Yushi. After a while, he opened his eyes and carefully observed the stars in the sky. A playful smile appeared on his face. He had enough confidence in Yushi. Of course, he was not referring to Yushi's strength. Although she inherited the bloodline of Dustless and Kagaya, this little girl's strength was average. Most of the reason was that she refused to learn. Yin didn't care about that. Only her ability to escape was taught by Dustless. Dustless, Sama, the relationship between Straw Hat Luffy and Pirate Hunter Zoro has changed completely. White Zetsu said without warning. The quiet night was broken by him. At this time the sky was dark and the sea in the distance was turbulent, setting off monstrous waves. Deep in the sea, there seemed to be prehistoric beasts rolling and stirring the sea. The whole sea was restless. Seeing this scene, Dustless couldn't help but frown. His eyes subconsciously looked at the sea where Blackbeard had escaped. Straw Hat Luffy. When did that kid hook up with Roland Zoro? Dustless, who recovered, was puzzled. If he didn't guess wrong, the two of them had met for some time, and it was not the island where he had sent Luffy off the ship. White Zetsu had expected this and told Dustless all the details of the matter. Unintentionally planted willows and willows grow. Perhaps this is fate. After listening to White Zetsu's explanation, Dustless nodded and sighed with emotion. Everyone's fate was destined to be inextricably linked. Even if they were in different corners of the sky, they would still meet. What happened after that? What happened to those two brats? According to my guess, their strengths weren't on par with each other. The final outcome should be that both sides suffered injuries, and the victor couldn't be decided. Wuxian said with a calm expression. Hearing this, White Zu shook his head. Dustless had guessed wrong. Luffy and Swallow had decided on a victor. Straw Hat Luffy won. Of course, after the two of them fought for several hours, Zoro was moved by Luffy's will and was willing to join his pirate regiment. However, the two of them seemed to be born unlucky. The raft that they painstakingly built was eroded by the waves in less than half a day. White Zetsu shrugged helplessly. Dustless was silent. He did not intend to disturb Luffy's plan for the time being. Sailing required many companions and it was impossible to explore the new world with only Luffy and Zoro. What are you guys planning? Luffy is still young, he has no value to you. Fire Fist Ace opened his eyes with difficulty. His freckled face was haggard and dispirited as if he had aged several decades. His voice was unprecedentedly weak. Due to Zetsu's emergency treatment, Fire Fist Ace had been pulled back from the King of Hell, temporarily saving his life. Chess pieces are not divided into big and small. Those who can use the steel blade are often those who are not in the mainstream. Dustless explained while shaking his finger. Dustless observed Ace's body turning, and then looked as far as his eyes could see. In a trance he saw Blackbeard fleeing in panic. Do you already feel regret? Serves you right. That's right, people like Titch. Releasing a tiger back to the mountain is indeed a big problem. Ace used all his strength to mock Dustless. Only in this way would he be able to redeem his lost heart. Releasing a tiger back to the mountain? Nonsense, don't be a smartass. Dustless looked down at Ace, who was lying on the ground, and then smiled. I might as well tell you, I have been thinking of a reasonable way to let Blackbeard go without being suspected. I thought for a long time, but I didn't expect him to take the initiative to kidnap Moon Shi and escape. In fact, this is in line with my plan. Dustless told the truth. The 2nd Division captain of the Whitebeard Pirates is mysteriously missing. Whitebeard is bound to be crazy looking for you. Unfortunately, no one knows that you fell into my hands. Blackbeard won't say it and I won't say it either. What's your goal? Ace asked with an ashen face. As Dustless said, Blackbeard will never speak. For the time being, he still needs to lurk in the Whitebeard Pirates to find a place to hide from the wind, and no one else knows about this incident. If Dustless doesn't say it, only ghosts in the world will know. Staring at the battered and exhausted Ace, Wu Chen's eyes shot out a cold light. One day in the future when you recover, I will send you to Sengoku. Ace looked sluggish and looked at Dustless incredulously. He was not an idiot. Of course he understood what it meant. His face changed in an instant and he had guessed what his purpose was. From the beginning, your purpose was not for me to get the so-called dark fruit, but for the entire Whitebeard Pirates. His pupils shrank, Ace trembled and his back was cold. But compared to you just now, you are much more enlightened now. Dustless nodded and his face was fierce. I know Sengoku's temperament. He will execute you publicly to lure the Whitebeard Pirates. In the future, Ace will be sent to Sengoku after he recovers from his injuries. Sengoku will definitely announce the news as soon as possible, and then set up an inescapable net to wait for the Whitebeard Pirates. This is also the script of the War of the Best, that Dustless planned a long time ago. No wonder you will leave me alive. Ace's eyes were full of despair. As the son of Whitebeard, he naturally understood the character of the latter. He valued his son as his own, and when the time comes he will desperately kill the Marine headquarters. You will definitely cause a war by doing this, which is not good for the Marine. Ace advised. Dustless's dark eyes jumped with a deep light, and there seemed to be a black mist coming out of his eyes. At this moment he was like a demon in human skin, extremely gloomy and terrible. No good. It's true, but as long as I can destroy this world, it doesn't matter. Chapter 675. Ace's eyes widened as he looked incredulously at the smiling Dustless. As a Marine Admiral, not only did he not choose to maintain the order of the world, but he also hoped that the world would collapse as soon as possible. It would be strange if he was not shocked. His cold eyes looked straight at Dustless's dead eyes, and the fire of ambition reflected in his eyes made Ace's eyes feel stinging. The burning flame was enough to swallow the whole world. Blackbeard thinks he's smart. Well, he deserves to be so unlucky. He wants to swallow the whole world with ambition, but he doesn't want to pay anything. It's impossible and unrealistic. Dustless whispered. There is no such thing as a free pie in the sky. A few years ago, the dark fruit that provoked the Whitebeard Pirates and the Bigumamu Pirates. It was just a bait I put out. I didn't expect it to really cause a war between the two evil fishes. Dustless sighed. The temptation of some devil fruits in this world is so great that it can cause a war between the Yonko for emperors. After all, Doflamingo's flamingo fruit played countless pirates in the palm of his hand. The dark fruit, which is far more powerful than the flamingo fruit, is a deadly poison. Even if the Marine headquarters publicly executes me, my father will not be fooled. He is not an idiot. Ace said, but he lacked confidence, giving people a feeling of self-deception. Hearing this, Dustless just smiled silently. This is not something you should think about. Sometimes, he is such an idiot. Dustless said sarcastically. You don't have to worry about other things as long as he is white and fat, and then welcome a death that is as eye-catching as your father's. In this world, only you and your father can enjoy it, no one else. Dustless said straightforwardly. People who can be publicly executed are rare, especially in front of the whole world live broadcast. This kind of high-standard death is only the Pirate King and his son. You shut up, he is not my father. Like a cat whose tail was stepped on, Ace lost his calm and roared. For the Pirate King Roger, he has a bone-deep disgust and hatred. That's your business. You have the bloodline of One Piece. That's a fact. Otherwise, do you really think you're that valuable? Stop lying to yourself, Dustless said in disdain. He couldn't help but feel speechless for this kid. No matter how bad Roger was, he was still doing much better than Fire Fist Ace. At the very least, he wouldn't have been publicly executed, become the prey of others' schemes and drag others down with him. The more Ace criticized Roger, the more disdainful Dustless felt. In his opinion, this was just an escape in disguise. Early in the morning of the next day, the morning breeze blew and the sun shone brightly for thousands of kilometers. The violent storm that had overturned rivers and seas had finally stopped, and the tranquility of the past was restored once more. On the empty sea, a laughing raft was clearly visible. "Brat, get over here." Sitting on the raft without a care for his image, Blackbeard's expression was so ugly that it could drip water. Staring at Yushi in front of him, his heart was devastated and hit. From time to time, there would be all kinds of creatures on the bottom of the sea. Yushi would threaten Blackbeard to catch them, otherwise, she would immediately jump into the sea and commit suicide. At first, Blackbeard thought she was joking. What does a kid know about suicide? He ignored her. Unexpectedly, Yushi really jumped. On the spot, Blackbeard was so scared that he almost lost control of his bladder. For the descendant of his enemy, Blackbeard naturally held hatred. He couldn't wait to kill her, but he couldn't die now. At least he had to escape from Dustless's capture. After spending a lot of effort, Blackbeard was able to get Yushi out. After all, he still had to rely on her to save his life. If she died, she might be caught by Dustless and torn into pieces. "What are you doing, Big Beard?" Yushi blinked and asked, her eyes flashing cunningly. Hearing this, Blackbeard's mouth twitched and an unprecedented grievance rose in his heart. He suddenly realized that kidnapping Yushi was a wrong choice. Now he realized that it was not him who kidnapped Yushi, but himself who was kidnapped by Yushi. "Give me something to eat." After a moment of hesitation, Blackbeard took out the remaining iron box, which looked like compressed food, and handed it to Yushi. Although he wanted to starve her, he still hoped that Yushi would survive. "I don't want to eat this kind of thing, I want to eat a big meal." Yushi threw it back to Blackbeard. Blackbeard's old face shot out a murderous look. He warned with a murderous look, "Brat, you better be sensible, otherwise I will tear you to pieces and then take a little bit to feed the pirates." Blackbeard's eyes flashed with a terrifying light, as if he was a ghost, indicating that he was not joking. "You won't. If you do that, you will die. Such a simple raft will attract pirates, and it will be destroyed by large sea kings in an instant. You are a devil fruit user, you should understand the reason." Yushi smiled calmly. The fate of a devil fruit user who falls into the sea is self-evident and known to the world. "You are smart." Xianxia stared at Yushi incredulously and couldn't help but secretly nod. It was rare for a young girl to know so much. She was about to praise her when she suddenly realized that she was currently a hostage. "Bastard, you better not give me an inch and take a mile. If you anger me, I will definitely kill you." Blackbeard warned fiercely. Obviously, he kidnapped Yushi, but Blackbeard felt like he was waiting for a living ancestor. Blackbeard's face was black and his face was twitching slightly. His embarrassed and angry appearance was extremely comical. A strange emotion that he had never felt before spread from the bottom of his heart. This was the first time in his life that he had felt so helpless and was completely taken advantage of. Chapter 676. Blackbeard felt uncomfortable all over. Now it's more like being tied up. It's particularly uncomfortable. Even when he breathes, he feels an unprecedented discomfort. All in all, everything has changed. Now Blackbeard drank a stomach full of ink. He can only pinch his nose and swear that after returning to the Whitebeard pirates, he will make Dustless look good. Remember this clearly. You're just a hostage. There's nothing special about you, Blackbeard said coldly with a cold look in his eyes. He couldn't help but feel a burst of anger. It was fine that he was beaten up by Wuxian. That was because he wasn't skilled enough and couldn't blame others. However, this little girl in front of him was ordering him around like a princess. How could Blackbeard's arrogant self-esteem stand it? As a hostage, he can't forget his duty. "Of course I know this, Big Beard." Yushi nodded her head in agreement, but the corners of her eyes revealed a disapproving craftiness. "It's best if you know what's good for you." Seeing this, Blackbeard was silent. This little girl was very eloquent. Blackbeard didn't think that his eloquence would be better than Yushi. After all, most pirates are rough men. Ouch, it hurt so much. Inadvertently touching the wounds all over his body, Blackbeard's face suddenly turned pale and he screamed in pain. This tragic scream made people's scalp numb. "Seeing you in so much pain, I don't mind helping you once." A heavenly voice that could not bear Blackbeard's pain sounded out, carrying endless compassion and kindness. Blackbeard, who was rolling around in pain, suddenly stopped and his eyes subconsciously looked over. Just by you. Staring at Yushi, Blackbeard sneered, full of suspicion. If it was an ordinary passerby, Blackbeard can choose to reluctantly believe it. If the daughter of his enemy chooses to help him at all costs, Blackbeard won't believe it. What's more, he doesn't think Yushi has that ability. The way White Zetsu treats Fire Fist Ace. In fact, I can do it too, and I'm more familiar with it than him. Yushi's thin lips opened and whispered. White Zetsu. Blackbeard was stunned at first, then he remembered Fire Fist Ace, who was brought back from hell. His eyes flashed with greed. For White Zetsu's magical power, he saw it in his eyes and remembered it in his heart. If possible, Blackbeard wanted to kidnap Zetsu to be the ship's doctor. In the end, he is just a product created by my father. What he learned can only be considered as superficial knowledge, but I have inherited most of my father and mother's abilities compared to him, although my skills are not exquisite. Yushi said confidently as she patted her chest. Even so, it couldn't dispel the doubts in Blackbeard's heart. It was impossible for him to be so idiotic as to bet his life on the little brat. This was no different from setting himself on fire. However, these words reminded him of something. If his daughter can be abducted to my ship and become a pirate, Thinking of this, Blackbeard couldn't help but laugh. Not only could he take revenge on Dustless, but he could also solve the problem of the ship's doctor, killing two birds with one stone. Since you can, I'll let you treat me once. You better not lie to me otherwise. Humph. Staring at Yushi's delicate face, Blackbeard finally made up his mind. As a reward, I will let you leave safe and sound. If you violate this oath, you will be struck by lightning. Blackbeard patted his belly, giving off a crisp sound as he vowed solemnly. His voice seemed to be filled with magic, causing others to involuntarily believe him. At the same time, dozens of meters below the sea, a sea king slowly moved forward. Its eyes were strange three-tomo Sharingan. Obviously, it has been forcibly controlled by Dustless to eavesdrop on the traces of Blackbeard and Yushi. Yushi, who hadn't returned for a night, still caused Dustless to worry. Serves you right. Your daughter was kidnapped by Titch. She's dead for sure. Ace taunted. He took the opportunity to add insult to injury. White Zetsu's face was cold when he heard this, and he directly went up with a heavy kick. Boom. Even though Baiju's attack power was strong, his strength was far beyond that of a normal human. He kicked Ace's face until it bled profusely. Just him. The simple and casual words were full of confidence, and at the same time full of contempt for Blackbeard. Dustless calmly said, Yushi inherited the body characteristics of me and Kagaya, and has the ability to repair without limit. It's difficult for Blackbeard to kill her. Looking at the unwilling Ace with pity and sympathy, Dustless didn't even have the mood to ridicule him and waited quietly. On the slowly drifting raft. Looking carefully, Blackbeard is no longer the same as before. His whole body has recovered, his whole body is bright and his face is red. Blackbeard is no longer as depressed as before, and his whole body is full of vitality, glowing with a strong vitality. This feeling of pleasure is really good. Waving his arms, Blackbeard's mouth stinks, comparable to rotten fish. You're letting me go now, right? Covering her nose, Yushi's voice is pleasant to the ear, and her exquisite jade hand is gently waving, trying to isolate Blackbeard's bad breath. Let you go? How is that possible? Do you think I will obediently be the ship's doctor? Blackbeard's face changed into a sinister smile. Yushi's beautiful eyes flowed with sparkling tears, and her white and tender fingers trembled as she pointed at Blackbeard. How can you be so shameless, saying that you will be struck by lightning for breaking the oath? Blackbeard's face is sinister, and the corner of his mouth is high, with a contemptuous smile pointing at the void. His expression is arrogant, with an indescribable savagery. If you don't accept it, then let the heavens strike me. Boom, boom, boom. The moment his voice fell, the cloudless sky suddenly became gloomy, and dark clouds gathered in the depths of the clouds, and dazzling thick lightning crackled, shocking the sky. The oath came true, you are on your own. Yushi blinked her eyes and smiled evilly. Blackbeard's eyes widened and he looked at the lightning in the sky in horror. His heart was filled with fear and he instinctively retreated, and a mouthful of old blood directly burst out. What kind of joke is this? Why didn't my previous wish come true? Chapter 677. In the sky above, dark clouds gathered and lightning flashed. The clouds above and below the clouds stirred, presenting a scene of the end of the world. The same scene played out in the sky within a radius of 10 miles. Oppressive and spectacular. Damn heavens, I didn't see you open your eyes before, but now you have. Blackbeard roared in fear. He couldn't bear the oppressive lightning. He pointed at the sky and cursed as if this was the only way to vent the depression in his heart. Boom, boom, boom. The dark clouds in the sky seemed to understand Blackbeard's curses. The dark clouds in the sky expanded again, and the lightning became even more terrifying as if it wanted to destroy the entire sea. Blackbeard smacked his lips as he saw this scene. He lowered his eyes and a cold light flashed in them. Is this little girl the heaven's granddaughter? Blackbeard, who didn't believe in ghosts and gods, guessed. For a moment he also suspected that his brain was damaged. Jejej. The clear and melodious sound of a silver bell entered his ears and Blackbeard was stunned. He raised his head and looked down at Yushi. It must be because of you, you little rascal. Blackbeard's eyes revealed an ominous glint. He immediately showed his evil character. He raised his right arm and pointed his palm in the direction of Yushi. A majestic gravitational force suddenly shot out. Dark water. Blackbeard laughed sinisterly. However, the next scene caused him to be stunned. His face was filled with astonishment. Yushi's body seemed to not exist. She was completely immune to the gravitational force. No matter how strong it was, how wide the range was, it couldn't shake her. Big Beard, you will never be able to catch me. Her eyes narrowed into crescents. Yushi smiled proudly. Her crisp laughter was like the sound of a mountain spring, pleasant to the ear. However, Blackbeard felt a wave of nausea. It was full of sarcasm and ridicule. She was so close, but he couldn't shake her. Wasn't this indirectly mocking him for being useless? I'm just thinking for you. You have angered the heavens by randomly swearing. If you kill me, you won't even have a corpse left. Yushi softly persuaded. Blackbeard only sneered when he heard this. Although I don't know how it happened, it should be your doing. As long as I kill you, all of this will disappear. Blackbeard said through gritted teeth. At this point he had also given up on his unrealistic thoughts. As long as he could quickly send this living ancestor away, nothing else mattered. As for the idea of asking her to be the ship's doctor, he had also thrown it out of the window. Survival was the most important thing. Kill me. The key is, can you do it? Her thin lips slightly opened. Unlike the past, Yushi said lightly like a breeze. Kaguya was a divine tree, possessing insane vitality and recovery abilities. She had also inherited a large amount of chakra. You're just a little girl. Don't get carried away. Boom, boom, boom. Blackbeard's angry roar had yet to fall when the divine lightning that had been brewing for a long time rumbled down. The momentum of the divine lightning that could destroy the heavens and the earth made people tremble with fear. A trace of despair involuntarily rose from the bottom of their hearts. Fortunately, Blackbeard, who has extraordinary observation hockey, has already predicted that although the lightning is fast, his attainments in observation hockey are deeper. Dark water. The space shattered like a mirror and a gigantic black hole suddenly appeared. At the instant the lightning and thunder attacked Blackbeard, his heart leaped to his throat. Then, the boundless gravitational force from the black hole spread out and instantly engulfed it. Idiot. Blackbeard beamed with joy. Gravity is the natural enemy of all things and affects the whole world. There is no ability that can ignore its existence. It can be so powerful now. When it is easy to use in the future, its power will be even more terrifying. You really are an idiot. Looking at Blackbeard with pity, Little Moon, she let out a long sigh that did not match her age. There is no doubt that gravity is terrible. He also has to vary from person to person. Although the strength of temporarily obtaining the dark fruit is strong, he is still too far away to completely control it. You can swallow lightning, that's your self-deceiving idea. Yushi said indifferently. Boom, boom, boom. As if it was efficacious, a vast and pure lightning that was dozens of times thicker than before converged and instantly became 10 times thicker. The oppressive lightning made people not dare to look directly at it, and the hair all over their body trembled uncontrollably. Blackbeard's old face involuntarily flashed with fear. What a shocking aura. Blackbeard said with an ugly expression. This was not all the lightning in the sky. If all of them gathered together and fell. Just imagining it made Blackbeard shiver, and the fear in his eyes disappeared in an instant. Coax her. Blackbeard, who thought for a long time without any countermeasures, could only lower his arrogant head and turn to ask little Yushi for help. The situation was stronger than him. If he wanted to live, he had to beg for mercy. His rough fat face tried to maintain a kind smile, even though it looked ugly as a pig. The moment he turned around, Blackbeard was dumbfounded. His mind was blank and he lost the ability to think. The scene in front of him was actually empty. As for Yushi, she had already run to God knows where. Only Blackbeard with a face full of astonishment, waiting for the lightning to strike. Boom, boom, boom. While Blackbeard was in a daze, the thunder that filled the sky poured down in torrents. The short gap eroded him. His whole body was like a lightning man bathed in lightning. One could clearly see the skeleton inside his body. Dustless, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly frowned. He felt a pair of small hands surrounding him. Opening his eyes, the reflection in his eyes was the smiling Yushi. Sighing helplessly, Dustless picked her up and scratched her nose. "It's time to go back, Yushi," Dustless said softly. Then he carried her and disappeared from the island. He easily walked to the surface of the sea. It was clearly just a simple walk, but one step could strangely cross a distance of hundreds of meters. As for Fire Fist Ace, the person in charge of him was White Zetsu. Chapter 678. Blackbeard's life or death is not important to Dustless. Everything is just fate and no one will care about what happened to him. However, according to Dustless's guess, Blackbeard, who is full of luck, will never stop here in his life. His partner is still at large for the time being, and he should not give up Blackbeard easily. It takes a few days to reach Mariehua by boat, but Dustless only takes half a day to walk. Dustless's villa as a celestial dragon was brightly lit. When he arrived at Mariehua, it was close to dusk and the gorgeous sunset was beautiful, enveloping Mariehua like a paradise on earth, and the golden color was beautiful. However, no one knew about the other miserable depravity after the golden brilliance. After half a day of walking, Dustless also felt deeply tired, and the cells all over his body began to protest against overtime. He wanted to ask White Zoo for other news, but he didn't think about it. There was still a long time in the future and there was no need to be so anxious. When he came to the bedroom, Dustless suddenly found that Yushi, the brat, had fallen asleep with saliva on the corner of her mouth. He didn't know what she was dreaming about and she was giggling, which made him speechless. After taking Yushi back to her room, Dustless went back to his room to sleep. It was said to be sleeping, but he actually came to another world. The dark blue dreamy void, the fresh space makes people feel comfortable, and the majestic wind stacks up, beautiful as a painting. Dustless, who was invited by Ling Er, came to the system world again. The lottery is held once every 5 years. After more than 10 years, Dustless has 2 chances, which is not easy to come by. Coming to the system world, Dustless first thought of the girls. As for the lottery, although it is important, it is not important to put it before or after, and it is even more insignificant compared to the beautiful scenery. This caused the system consciousness Ling Er to complain. In the room of the antique fragrance, Kaguya sat by the window, looking at the scenery outside the window. Her beautiful eyes were empty, and sometimes she would show a charming smile. Her pretty face was slightly red, and suddenly she was shocked to find a skilled big hand exploring her body. The movement was extremely skillful, gentle and delicate, like a spring breeze, and Kaguya's heart was rippling, and it immediately heated up rapidly. After a few rounds of teasing, Huey's breathing became heavier. "Don't mess around. It's still daytime." Huey blushed and said shyly. Even without turning her head, she knew that the owner of the careless hand was Dustless. In this world, only Dustless understood her body the best. Even though she was already over 1,000 years old, she was still much more conservative than Yuluo and the other ladies. She immediately tried her best to stop Dustless. "So what if it's daytime? The opportunity is fleeting. After a while we'll all be sleeping together." Dustless had a mortal body and he had not eaten for many days. Furthermore, he had gone through 2 consecutive fierce battles. The flames had already filled his body and mind. If he didn't release it now, he might explode. "I heard from Ueshi that you have a beautiful maid in the outside world," Huey said as she slapped away Dustless's thick arm. Her tone was somewhat resentful. "That traitor, I gave her food and drink every day, and now she dares to betray me. Dustless roared with righteous indignation. Even so, his sneaky eyes circled around Huey's body and flashed a bright light. Obviously he didn't care. No matter how Huey resisted, the hand chakra surged and the two directly faced each other. The red-eyed Dustless directly rushed towards Huey. Don't do it here, they can. Huey, who couldn't resist Dustless, panicked. Tsunade, Terumi, Mei, Yuluo and the other women in the pavilion in the distance could clearly see. Although their strength was not as good as Dustless and her, they could still hear the sound at such a short distance. Isn't this just right? How exciting! Dustless laughed. Immediately, no matter how Huey resisted, he directly covered her mouth. For the strong Dustless, the bed was too redundant, standing was enough. Until Huey couldn't bear the burden and fainted, and several other women were also fainted one after another. Dustless hummed a little tune to find the system consciousness Ling. There's no need to make such an expression. Looking at the black-faced Ling, speechlessly, Dustless secretly scolded her. He hadn't relaxed for a long time, and the masculinity that had been accumulated for a long time must be released. It's not a big deal to be ridiculous. Why don't we do it once? Dustless smiled maliciously. In contrast to the outside world, he was like a sculpture all day long. Now he was like a dissolute noble son, and he was the kind of person who dared to tease anyone. I haven't seen you for a few days and your courage has grown a lot. You even dare to say such things to me. The system consciousness Ling, looked at Dustless with interest, thinking of his glorious history. The reserved little brat in the past is now an adult and knows how to do things that adults do. Dustless, who had lived 3 lives, could naturally hear Linger's teasing, but he didn't care. After holding it in for so long, it didn't hurt to occasionally indulge to improve the quality of his life. That little girl would pester Wu Chen every day for various reasons. Even when sleeping every day she would do the same. She would use groundless reasons to sleep with him. Wu Chen's inner depression could be imagined. Every day felt like a year. With such a good opportunity in front of him, he naturally wouldn't let it go easily. But just you? You're still too far away, your little body will be sucked dry by me. Unlike before, Ling, smiled. Her body also twisted, and that soul-stirring curve made Dustless dazzled. He was sure that the system consciousness in front of him was definitely in existence with some flesh. Chapter 679. Ling Er's devastatingly beautiful peerless talent was naturally coveted by Wu Chen. Unfortunately, Prince Xiang had a dream, but the goddess had no heart. Ling Er's body belonged to Wu Chen from beginning to end, but her heart was an exception. Dustless, who was not her opponent for the time being, certainly couldn't force himself on her. The 2 lottery draws have begun. Without waiting for Dustless to answer, Ling Er waved her hand lightly, and purple gas rotated on her fingers, floating with an indescribable charm. That mysterious power seemed to be the origin of the universe, and it could evolve any matter in the universe. In the blink of an eye, a giant wheel was formed with a bang and dazzling abilities were marked on it. Gulp. Even though Dustless's heart had been trained to be as firm as a rock in the face of this scene, he couldn't help but choke up. Looking at the whole world of One Piece, he was lonely at the top. And the whole vast universe. It was just a drop in the ocean, and he still had to rely on these abilities to step into a higher world. It's about to start. Ling Er opened her mouth and exhaled an intoxicating fragrance. Her pink and tender lips parted as she spoke. Dustless nodded when he heard the words, indicating that it could start. Looking at the various abilities on the wheel, the desire in Dustless's eyes was undisguised. Protecting these lovers and family members who were together with him day and night was his motivation to become stronger. The system was to provide him with assistance to become stronger. By the way, how is Yushi's strength? Her bloodline has the advantages of Kagaya, a rare peerless genius. Seeing that the wheel showed no signs of stopping, Yushi praised. Kagaya was the sacred tree itself, and Yushi was her Ling. Her aptitude and strength were self-evident. I also have my advantages. Dustless stared at Ling Er and then said helplessly, aptitude is not important. Yushi doesn't seem to be interested in cultivation. Let her be, it's not like I can't protect her. The gentle tone was full of confidence and Dustless's face was full of love. He liked this hard-won daughter very much. Ling Er, who was about to speak, suddenly raised her eyebrows and the ground shook slightly. Buzz buzz buzz. The large turntable stopped spinning and the scene that came into view was unflattering, at least in Dustless's eyes. He was not interested in it at all. Last time it was Uchiha Madara's Ting'ai Trembling Star, and this time it's Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison. Although it's a good technique, it doesn't work on me at all. He shook his head and sighed helplessly. His bleak tone was filled with disappointment. What he got this time was Madara's strongest move, Will Grave, Border Prison. However, it was useless, at least to the current Dustless. It wasn't just a technique like Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison. Even other heaven-defying techniques had little effect on Dustless, to the point of being negligible. You can only blame your bad luck. This kind of thing depends on your luck. At the same time, her jade-like fingers gently waved, and the large lottery wheel that had stopped began to spin once more. This was the second and final lottery draw. Look at my luck. That's also because your luck is bad, I didn't touch it. Dustless directly complained. Suddenly he felt a warm, mysterious force quietly passing through his eyes, staying for a moment, and then rushing into his nerve endings, disappearing without a trace. Dustless knew that Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison, had been saved in his eyes. Shaking his head, his disappointment and frustration were swept away. The higher the expectation, the greater the disappointment. He just needed to keep calm. In fact, this is also a good technique, but your requirements are too high. Linger whispered. The power of Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison, is well known. It once killed 9 Bijou in an instant and easily injured Sasuke and Naruto, and this technique can be said to be unsolvable. Dustless gently nodded, reluctantly accepting Linger's words. Buzz buzz. After a while the ground trembled violently again. Looking up, he saw that the large lottery wheel had stopped spinning again. Whitebeard's tremor fruit. After a brief moment of absent-mindedness, Dustless's pupils widened, and he exclaimed in surprise. As you can see, Linger echoed. This strange devil fruit was the tremor fruit. Known as the strongest paramecia, tremor fruit has enough power to easily destroy the world. But it seems to be useless for you. Wrinkling her white and tender nose, Linger said with a trace of sympathy in her tone. In the last few lottery draws, Wu Chen's luck was terrible. The things that were drawn were either unusable or had some other abilities. They were completely useless. Useless? You mean, tremor fruit? It's useless for me, but it's useful for others. Dustless's mouth raised a mysterious smile, and then his body slowly dissipated and completely disappeared. You want me to eat it? In the pavilion, Tsunade asked in confusion. Dustless nodded and handed the tremor fruit to Tsunade. You are a strength-type player and tremor fruit is very suitable for you. It has the power to destroy the world. Dustless promised. Whitebeard's power is well known, and Tsunade's power is also unparalleled in the world. Eating tremor fruit, there is no doubt that she can also go to a higher level. This is a treasure that the whole world wants. It's enough to cause an unprecedented bloody storm. Looking at the tremor fruit in Tsunade's hand, Dustless sighed. Is it appropriate to give such a valuable thing to me? Tsunade blushed, embarrassed. Dustless smiled slightly and his eyes flashed with surprise. He didn't expect Tsunade to feel shy. Valuable? Maybe, if you have to measure the value of tremor fruit and you. Tremor fruit has a price but no market, and you are priceless from beginning to end, and the whole world can't exchange for it. Chapter 680. Even if you exchange the whole world for it, I will still be indifferent. This sentence lingered in Tsunade's ears, but it was deeply imprinted in her eyes. Her nose was slightly red and the tears in her eyes almost burst out. However, Tsunade wasn't the kind of person who would cry. The strong were strong and the weak were weak. She just used all her strength to force the tears into her eyes. It's just an ordinary devil fruit. How can it be so important to me? Tsunade said rudely to cover up the change in her heart. What kind of people are they? Forget it as long as they are willing to eat it. Wu Chen shook his head and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He naturally knew that Tsunade didn't mean what she said. In fact, she was moved to tears, but she was originally the kind of strong type. Perhaps if it was someone else, she would have already cried. Gulp. Tsunade took off the tremor fruit and looked at this strange fruit. She hesitated and put it in her mouth. After chewing and swallowing, her face suddenly changed and almost turned purple. It was no different from being poisoned. You bastard. This thing isn't used for murder, is it? Tsunade patted her chest and asked with a pale face. It was the most disgusting fruit she had ever eaten in her life, bar none. Just as she was about to scold Dustless, an unprecedented energy fluctuation suddenly emerged in her body, strengthening and changing her whole body. A majestic and boundless power surged into his heart. This is the devil fruit's ability? Tsunade's voice trembled and her face was shocked. She looked at her arm in disbelief. Her white fingers looked weak, but Tsunade knew that she could easily flatten a mountain. Yes, this is the ability of Tremor fruit. It is said to have the power to destroy the world. Dustless nodded and praised, looking at Tsunade with shining eyes. The old guy Whitebeard is so strong that the whole marine is afraid of him. To a large extent it is because of Tremor fruit. Its power is unparalleled and it can easily destroy an island. I don't know to what extent you can use it. Dustless explained softly. The ability varies from person to person and the key depends on the host. You want to know? Tsunade asked with interest. Isn't that obvious? Everyone wants to know the limit of the Tremor fruit's power. Dustless rolled his eyes. Tsunade just smiled and immediately jumped up. Her white and tender fingers clenched into a fist, and with the force of falling she blasted toward Wuxia. This crazy woman hasn't changed at all. Dustless, who didn't expect Tsunade's sudden attack, shook his head helplessly and remained silent. His body was covered with golden chakra. In fact, Dustless didn't hate Tsunade's attitude. Instead he appreciated it. This was also Tsunade's personality. She was straightforward and forthright. Kinsisanu. Following Dustless's command, the golden shadow materialized and a large hole-like frame condensed in an instant. The thick ribs were clearly visible. I used to worry about this thing but now, break for me. Seeing this, Tsunade smiled pleasantly. Her tone revealed a kind of pleasure, as if she finally vented the grievances that she had endured for a long time. Her light voice was filled with unprecedented joy. Then Tsunade smashed Kinsisanu's head like a cannonball. Kakaka. The seemingly ordinary fist instantly revealed its ferocious appearance. With an invincible state, it instantly shattered the mature Kinsisanu's head. It was as if she was cutting tofu. She just ate the Tremor fruit. She can play to this extent. Dustless's eyes widened and he couldn't help but secretly click his tongue. In his impression Whitebeard was just SOSO. After thinking about it he was relieved. Tsunade's foundation was originally good, and her strength was enough to shatter the earth. Now that she ate the Tremor fruit, it would be strange if she couldn't break Kinsisanu. Looking up at Tsunade's smiling face, Dustless felt happy from the bottom of his heart. At the same time he also had an idea in his heart. His confidant's basic strength was extremely strong. After each of them ate the devil fruit they should have a great improvement. Tsunade and Kagaya were the same. Now Tsunade could easily destroy the mature Kinsisanu, and Kagaya ate the light fruit that Dustless got from the lottery, and her strength reached a higher level. Hey. How long are you going to look down on me? You dare to be distracted in the battle. Tsunade's angry roar resounded through the sky, and the dissatisfaction in her tone was clear. She glared at Dustless and the strength of her fist became more domineering. The moment he came into contact with Dustless, he merely lifted his palm in a carefree manner. Boom! The powerful fist containing the power of thousands of pounds fell softly in the palm of Dustless's hand. He grabbed it lightly as if he was grabbing a baby's small hand and played with it casually. How is it possible? Tsunade lost her mind for a while and said uncontrollably. Her current strength had reached an incredible level, but Dustless could still borrow her attack so easily. It would be strange if she wasn't surprised. Impossible? My body is equivalent to the Jubi, and I have practiced taijutsu for more than 10 years in the One Piece world. The toughness of my body has long been beyond your imagination. Dustless explained calmly and his tone was as light as a breeze. Seeing Tsunade in disbelief, Dustless just smiled. Over the years Tsunade and the others have been improving. With the help of Kagaya, the ancestor of chakra, their strength can be said to be 1,000 miles a day. But they also ignored one thing, Dustless is also improving rapidly and the speed is faster than them. Chapter 681. Tsunade was shocked. She didn't expect that the gap between her and Wuxia was so big that she couldn't look at his back. She could only stare silently behind him. I didn't expect you to progress so fast, Tsunade. Perceiving the strength of Tsunade's fist, Dustless gently nodded, showing a satisfied smile. Perhaps if it was someone else they would be turned into a pool of flesh and blood. Am I strong? Tsunade's beautiful eyes rolled, flashing a strange luster. Her eyes narrowed into a crescent moon with a teasing tone. Hearing this, Dustless frowned slightly, feeling that Tsunade's words had other meanings, but he still nodded. Tsunade's current state was indeed different from before. There was a dimensional gap. If that's the case, then I'll let you see a stronger me. As soon as the words fell, Dustless grabbed Tsunade's fist, and a white halo swept out without warning. Then the entire space roared and trembled, making a violent vibration. Ripples visible to the naked eye spread rapidly along Tsunade's fist, like a wave erupting and swallowing the entire sky. Hum! A faint sound of sorrow rang out, spreading to every corner of the world, and the entire void was surrounded. Kakaka! The void in front of Dustless suddenly burst and cracks like a spider web appeared. Violent energy fluctuations extended with these transparent cracks. Dustless was annihilated in an instant. Pucci. Caught off guard, Dustless's body was instantly torn apart, turning into several halves floating in the air. Dustless's eyes were full of a rare dullness. Although it's my carelessness, but how is this possible? Did Tsunade not use the power of Tremor fruit in the attack just now? Dustless's heart was shocked, speechless, like the waves for a long time. Silent for a while, Wuxian knew that it was the ability of Tremor fruit, Gura no Mi. It can cause vibrations at will and the degree can be adjusted. It can cause tsunamis. It has the power to destroy the world. Boom boom boom. A loud roar woke Dustless up from his thoughts. He looked up and saw the ground burst open. A ferocious crack appeared, extending endlessly into the distance as if it was going to pull the whole world into it. Dustless's old face twitched as he looked at his body that had been torn to pieces. He felt gloomy. With a thought his body recovered. How does it feel to be torn apart? Tsunade teased. In the past it was difficult to even touch Dustless's body. Tsunade was also surprised. She didn't expect the devil fruit to be so powerful. It was true that he had the power to destroy the world. How does it feel? What do you think? I have an immortal body. Physical attacks of that level are just tickling. Dustless didn't care on the surface, but his heart was full of anger. If he didn't teach this little girl a lesson, it wouldn't take long for Tsunade to turn over and press Dustless under her body. Although he had an immortal body, it was not a glorious thing to be torn apart. Dustless's sharp eyes stared at Tsunade's body, and the corner of his mouth raised a malicious smile. His pupils twisted sharply, and his left eye turned into a purple Rinnegan Sharingan. Dustless also planned to try the jutsu he got from the lottery. Staring at the place where Tsunade stood for a long time, Wu Chen's left eye suddenly widened and dangerous energy fluctuations were released. The invisible ripples instantly swallowed the entire eye socket. At the same time, a mysterious, undetectable and undefendable power fluctuation covered Tsunade's whole body, but it was very weak. It looked harmless and almost negligible. Tomb of Samsara, border prison. With Dustless's voice fell, this mysterious unknown power, in just an instant became thousands of times stronger, and Tsunade's whole body was bounced away. Boom boom boom. Under the impact of the powerful force, Tsunade directly smashed a mountain out of thin air and easily turned it into dust like tofu. It was enough to show how shocking the power of Tomb of Samsara, border prison, was. That bastard must be deliberately revenge, narrow-minded man. Under the ruins, Tsunade was intact and her snow-white skin was pink. The most exciting thing was that under the impact of the strong repulsive force, the clothes all over her body were blown apart. Her clothes didn't cover her body. Even with Tsunade's forthright personality, she couldn't help but blush at this moment. Because the two behemoths in front of her were too big, she directly drooped. This scene caused one's imagination to run wild. Little guy, you dare to fight with me? In the sky, Dustless laughed in high spirits. Even with the mountain ruins buried, Tsunade was exposed under Dustless's eyes. Her jade-like body was exquisite, as pure as the first snow, dazzling him. The extinguished flame in Dustless's heart soared again. Really? When did I become like this? Shaking his head fiercely, trying to calm himself down, Dustless couldn't help but laugh bitterly at himself. In the past he could clear his mind, but recently, It seemed that he was getting more and more out of tune, and his whole mind was filled with images that were not suitable for children. Boom, boom, boom. The earth trembled as an energy fluctuation powerful enough to destroy the heavens, and the earth burst out from the ruins. It was like an evil dragon that had awakened from its slumber in ancient times. It stretched out endlessly with a monstrous momentum. Immediately after, countless large pieces of rubble collapsed, turning into fine particles that resembled a drizzle. The naked Tsunade suddenly reflected in Dustless's eyes. It doesn't matter anyway, it's not like you haven't seen it before. With her hands on her hips, looking up at Dustless in the sky, Tsunade was unexpectedly magnanimous, and her jade-like face was natural and neat, giving the feeling of a heroine. Dustless's eyes couldn't help but stagnate, and his even breathing became faster. He was not a monk, especially after becoming a different kind of sacred tree. His energy and physical strength were almost infinite. Chapter 682. Wuxian couldn't help but be speechless. A person always degenerates in peace. The saying was not wrong at all. When one is full, one will think of lust. A peaceful and beautiful environment always slowly annihilates a person's hot-bloodedness and makes him lose his ambition. After taking a deep breath, she stabilized her fluctuating impatience. The flame of desire in Wu Chen's eyes was extinguished. Her clean face calmed down and she returned to her usual indifferent self. His eyes lost the fiery color from before and were replaced with an unchanging indifference. Beauty trap doesn't work on me, Tsunade. Dustless's heart was as calm as water. The light accent was like a gust of wind, guiding all kinds of emotions out of the mind, full of absolute reason. A pair of deep eyes were shining, looking at Tsunade like a torch. Immediately, the pupils of Dustless's eyes turned sharply. A piece of clothing that Dustless usually uses for himself was thrown to Tsunade. He has completely used Kamui as a storage space. Tsunade, who grabbed the clothes, hurriedly put them on. She tried to be as bold as possible, but it didn't mean that she could directly fight with Dustless without clothes. By the way, the speed of your progress is really amazing. Staring at the broken ground, it was as if it was hit by a meteorite. It collapsed, a large deep pit appeared and countless dense cracks appeared. Of course, this is Kagaya's sister's guidance. Of course, the progress is fast. Not only me but also Terumi Mei, Red Lotus, and that little girl Xian. The fastest progress is your first wife, Yu Luo. Maybe she has surpassed you. Tsunade chuckled, with pride and arrogance in her words, trying to catch disappointment from Dustless's face, but he was as still as a rock. Kagaya's sister? Dustless's face was strange and his mind was uncontrollably cold. He always felt that this name was neither fish nor fowl. Then he didn't think much about it and the corner of his mouth outlined a faint smile. Tsunade can call Kagaya so intimately, indicating that they get along very well with each other. As for whether Yu Luo could really surpass him, Dustless didn't care. It wasn't realistic. Even Huey wasn't his match, let alone Yu Luo. At the same time, Tsunade's momentum continued to rise. Even before she made a move, Dustless could vaguely see the cracks in the air. Haven't you had enough? Dustless frowned and said. Tsunade just chuckled when she heard this. You should at least let me familiarize myself with this tremor fruit. Tsunade smiled tenderly, extremely serious. Dustless didn't comment. This was true. He had just eaten the tremor fruit for less than an hour. It was indeed necessary to familiarize himself with some unknown abilities. After using it to the extreme, he could enter the Devil Fruit's higher level ability, Devil Fruit Awakening. Where's Huey? They have a lot of free time. Why don't you go find them? I'm very busy. Dustless asked. In the systems world, they had nothing to do and were bored out of their minds. Every time they got together, they would mostly brag about their past. After a long time, these women were even better at bragging than Dustless. Them. Tsunade shook her head resolutely when she heard this. They all stop at a certain point. It's difficult to understand the fruit's ability at a deeper level. Only you have a black heart and never show any mercy. This is suitable. Dustless's face suddenly twitched when he heard this, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Staring at Tsunade with gloomy eyes, Dustless opened his mouth to refute, but he couldn't speak because this was a fact. This was also why Yu Luo and others often asked him to practice, so Dustless rarely showed mercy. Since it was a training, there was no need to hold back. Between suffering more now and bleeding in the future, which was more important, Wuxian was naturally clear as a mirror. Therefore, every time he squeezed out their strength to the greatest extent, he chose to ruthlessly destroy the flowers and teach them a lesson. Only when a person was forced into a desperate situation could the body's potential erupt. For example, Luffy's Haushiko Haki was awakened because of this. Without pressure there would be no motivation. Only deadly pressure can give them the motivation to improve. Dustless walked this way in the past. Since you still came to me. This is what you asked for, Tsunade. Dustless's expression solidified and his face instantly became cold. Tsunade knew that Dustless was such a person, but she still came to train with him, indicating that she was mentally prepared. Dustless naturally won't show mercy. The palm of his hand was aimed at the sky below, exuding dangerous energy fluctuations. Dustless's expression was cold, and his left eye had been replaced by the Tensigen. Good luck. I hope you can touch the ability of Tremor Fruit as soon as possible as well as its true form. The majestic repulsive force condensed in his hand, and immediately roared mercilessly. Boom. The ground with a radius of tens of miles burst open in an instant, shaking violently and immediately collapsed. Tsunade, who was caught off guard, lost her balance and fell directly into it. As for whether it can hurt Tsunade, Dustless is not worried. Her exuberant vitality is enough to guarantee everything. Especially with the recent guidance of Kaguya, she has a more thorough understanding of the control of Baihao Jutsu and In Seal. In the entire system world except for Dustless and Kaguya, it is estimated that Tsunade's vitality and healing ability are the strongest. Boom. 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 A black shadow on the ground jumped out of thin air and almost instantly, it roared up like a cannonball. What an amazing jumping ability. Dustless secretly clicked his tongue, jumping nearly 100 meters in an instant, far beyond the physique of a ninja. I said I won't show mercy. In that case you should go down obediently. His eyes emitted a cold light and Dustless's body emitted a golden double-sided Susanoo, making the same hand print as his body. The sky suddenly darkened. Ting'ai Season. Chapter 683. The pitch-black shadow covered the sky and covered the earth. All things lost their light and appeared to be in a state of wailing. Everything in the world seemed to be in a state of collapse. The pitch-black shadow shrouded an area that was boundless and filled one with despair. This indescribable oppression was unparalleled, and the lazy white clouds in the sky were crushed by the vast momentum, revealing his ferocious appearance. A meteorite with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers slowly fell. How can this kind of thing be useful? I'm not as weak as before. Her beautiful eyes were filled with confidence. Tsunade rushed up, swept past Dustless's body, and rushed straight toward the meteorite in the sky at full speed. Kakaka. Her arm was covered with a white halo and countless cracks appeared in the air. The range was almost unlimited and it swallowed 1/10 of the meteorite. Even so, the power it unleashed was enough to stun anyone. Boom boom boom. The center of the meteorite, because that was where Tsunade bombarded with full force, suddenly trembled fiercely, and the whole meteorite gave the illusion that it was lifted a little for a moment and it stopped falling. Kakaka. The crisp sound of the explosion came into the ears, and the tiny cracks spread rapidly, almost like a whale swallowing the entire surface of the meteorite. Didn't you always say that a scholar who has been away for 3 days should be looked at with new eyes? Dustless, why do you always look at others with the same eyes? Tsunade smiled. As her voice fell, the meteorite in the sky finally couldn't bear the pressure and began to peel off. Boom boom boom. Several loud rumbling sounds swept out of the sky, and then the sky was filled with a dust rain, all of which were composed of various large and small meteorite fragments. The scene was very spectacular. So what? It's boring. Wuxian said softly, his face expressionless. The dazzling light condensed at the tip of his finger and immediately whistled out. This strange energy impact was unparalleled, full of evil oppression and terrifying energy fluctuations. This is Baijidama? Staring at the golden ball in Dustless's hand, Tsunade was shocked. The evil and gloomy chakra was obviously a high-density Baijidama, and the condensed chakra was huge, and its power was several times stronger than the QB she had seen before. Boom boom boom. A huge ball of fire rose up in the void and the scattered soil was instantly engulfed and annihilated. The dark sky once again regained its sunny appearance. Glancing at Tsunade, Dustless leaned over. This battle continued for several hours before it ended. Without a doubt, it ended with Dustless's victory. The winner has the spoils of war. Naturally, he won't easily let go of the exhausted Tsunade. He whipped her until she fainted. Only then did Wuxian settle the matter. Dustless chose to coldly suppress this matter for the sake of a man's reputation. When Dustless woke up the next morning, it was already late in the morning. Wuxian, who was sleeping, frowned. Suddenly he felt that there was something soft in the quilt. He gently pulled open the soft chonk quilt. A little girl who was curled up like a kitten came into view. Yushi. Dustless's pupils dilated as a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. He instinctively touched his clothes. Fortunately, this little girl didn't mess around. Wuxian breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the little girl who was sleeping soundly, he pinched her rosy cheeks and then shook his head helplessly. His mischievous daughter liked to be mischievous and pranks the most. She often did some unbearable things, even Dustless was pranked by her. Father. In a trance, aware of Dustless's movements, Yushi opened her eyes and looked at the serious face of Dustless. When she was about to ask, Dustless's solemn voice came in advance. Yushi, why are you in my room? I remember I put you back yesterday. Dustless's face was stiff and his tone was a little angry. This little girl was getting more and more unruly. In the middle of the night she actually launched a sneak attack. If he always let her do as she pleased, maybe there will be a big mess in the future. Yushi's eyes narrowed into crescent moons, and her delicate face revealed a small dimple. Obviously, she had expected Dustless to ask such a question. Father, look carefully. Yushi's tone was sly, and the corner of her mouth was hidden with a teasing smile. Looking around, Dustless was suddenly petrified. The room was exactly the same as before. The only difference was that this was Yushi's room. Yesterday when father was sleeping, I took the opportunity to snatch you. Yushi proudly said as she looked down at Dustless with her hands on her hips. Yesterday, Dustless was unconscious, so she transported him over overnight. His old face collapsed and Dustless's face unconsciously twitched. When he went into the system world, he did not expect this little girl to take advantage of the loophole. Come here, you are not allowed to do this kind of thing in the future. Pulling Yushi in front of him, Dustless coldly reprimanded. This little girl is getting bolder and bolder. Today it may be her room, but another day she may throw Dustless into the sea. Thinking of Yushi's strange temperament, Dustless felt a headache and helplessness. Sighing inwardly, he pushed all the responsibility to Huiji. This was the result of her indulgence. Yesterday I smelled a disgusting smell from father's body. Wrinkling her white jade-like nose, Yushi pouted in dissatisfaction. Her heart was abnormally unhappy. Smell? Dustless curiously asked. The smell of other women, it must be because of father's private life. You even had those disgusting erotic dreams. You are not young anymore, don't be like a child all day. Yushi lectured. Dustless's old face was red, and the blood in his heart was boiling. He almost spat out a mouthful of old blood, but he could not say anything. Chapter 684. Dustless's old face turned green and he could only smile bitterly. For this strange daughter he was helpless, he couldn't beat her or scold her, it was really a headache. Every time he taught this little girl a lesson, Yushi would cry and complain to Kagaya, and Kagaya inevitably scolded Dustless. Rubbing her black hair, Dustless lazily lay on the bed, closed his eyes and smelled the girl's faint fragrance, and his thoughts became active. He involuntarily began to think about the situation of today's world. I must have guessed it. Seeing that Wuxian was silent, little Yushi nodded seriously. In her heart she naturally thought that Wuxian was in the wrong. Then she happily jumped around on the bed. Like a little elf, sometimes she would rub on Dustless's body, laughing coquettishly and acting cute, causing Dustless to roll his eyes, but he didn't stop Yushi. Father, I want to be a pirate. Blinking her eyes, Yushi suddenly said something surprising. Dustless didn't object and looked at Yushi with interest. I need a suitable reason, and the daughter of a marine admiral is going to be a pirate. It's very bad for my reputation. Dustless reprimanded with a straight face. In fact, he didn't care. Pirates and marines didn't mean much to Dustless, and the pirates he secretly raised were not a small number, and they were all the best kind of pirates. More free and happy than now. Tilting her head, Yushi answered. Liar. Dustless pinched Yushi's face and stared at Yushi's shining pupils. His eyes became cold for a moment, directly seeing her heart. Seeing Wu Chen's elegant smile, Yushi hurriedly avoided his gaze. She didn't dare to look at Wu Chen. She leaned against Wu Chen's stomach and acted coquettishly, saying in a coquettish voice, "I will spy for father." Dustless was speechless. He didn't expect this little girl to spy on him. "I'm talking about information on beauties. I'm specifically searching for all kinds of beauties for father to satisfy your cravings." Yushi's eyes flashed with unshakable determination as she clenched her fists and said seriously. That sonorous and powerful voice was like an oath, causing Dustless to be at a loss. His eyes twitching violently, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Yushi. He no longer paid any attention to her, minding his own business as he put on his clothes. Sometimes the more you talk, the more mistakes you make. The worst part was that this little girl would often report to Huey and Dustless's other female friends, making things difficult for Dustless. In the eyes of those women, Dustless had unknowingly turned from a gentleman to a sex fiend, and according to Yushi's description, it was an extremely perverted kind. Father is going to deal with those pirates again? Unlike the past, little Yushi hugged the pillow. Her beautiful voice was less crisp and sweet-sounding, and more reluctant and a touch of loneliness. Dustless's footsteps suddenly stopped, and his face flashed with a complicated expression. In fact, he knew that Yushi was like Uzumaki Naruto, always attracting his attention with all kinds of amazing actions. "In the next few years, father will accompany you every day." Dustless rubbed Yushi's long black hair and then leaned over to Yushi's side. His dry lips fell on little Yushi's clean forehead as he vowed. Hearing this, Yushi's eyes flashed with joy, and the corner of her mouth also had an excited smile. But the moment she raised her head, she saw Dustless's evil smile. Her perfect little face suddenly stiffened, and the smile on the corner of her mouth disappeared in an instant. She said insincerely, "Smelly, don't touch me in the future, old man." After that, she wiped the remaining water stains on her forehead for fear of being contaminated by Dustless. This little girl is really arrogant. Dustless stared at Yushi and then simply walked out of her room. The observant Dustless naturally knew that Yushi was deliberately pretending for him to see. Boom! The moment the door closed, there was a cheer in the room. In the quiet study, Dustless quietly looked at the information sent by White Zetsu. Most of it was about the New World pirates and the movements of the Marine headquarters. Dustless did not say anything about capturing Fire Fist Ace and pretended that nothing had happened. Unlike the calm Dustless, the Whitebeard pirates were in a hurry, and the whole world was frantically looking for Ace. For Ace, Whitebeard liked him very much. That old guy is too attached to feelings, so he was used by Sengoku. If he pretended to be cold, Sengoku might not have the idea of capturing Fire Fist Ace. This is his own fault and he can't blame others. Dustless whispered softly. This kind of thing is a double-edged sword, hurting others and hurting oneself. Dustless, Sama is now going to give Fire Fist Ace to Sengoku? White Zetsu asked. Hearing this, Dustless bowed his head and thought for a few seconds and shook his head resolutely. Even if he gave Ace to Sengoku now, Sengoku may not be fooled. Sengoku used to be called a wise admiral, and the great staff officer of the Marine headquarters. These people are the old antiques of the previous era. They are very deep and have unique vision. It is certainly impossible to give Ace to them. In other ways, it will not arouse Sengoku's suspicion. Otherwise, it will only be self-defeating. Today, Sengoku has been a fleet admiral for more than 10 years. Even if Ace is handed over to him, he will not blindly fight with Whitebeard without absolute certainty. If he is not careful, the Marine may fall into a hopeless situation. By the way, how is Ace doing recently? Dustless, who had no countermeasures for the time being, asked. He can eat and drink, he is alive and kicking all day long. He will satirize me and seems to be talking about Luffy. White Zetsu said bitterly. Straw Hat Luffy has a good relationship with Ace. I can make use of him. A cold light flashed across Dustless's mouth. The corner of his mouth raised a strange curve. Chapter 685. Sengoku is not an idiot. Once he thinks that the Marine headquarters does not have the strength to compete with the Whitebeard pirates, even if he gives Fire Fist Ace to him, he will not publicly execute him. Quietly imprison Ace in the Impel Down or directly execute him secretly so that no one would know. I am afraid that Sengoku will not publicly execute him. Because of Dustless Sama, many of the Yonko 4 emperors have secretly chosen to join forces. The consequences of rashly executing Fire Fist Ace will not be borne by Sengoku. It is likely that Dustless will join forces with the other 3 Yonko 4 emperors to attack the marine headquarters together. Due to Dustless's oppression, the 4 emperors had no choice but to work together secretly. Since they couldn't fight one-on-one, they could only gang up. This was also forced out by Dustless, and it was all thanks to him. That's right. Wuxia nodded in agreement. Blackbeard also blamed Dustless for Surd's death, but he didn't see Whitebeard take revenge, indicating that Whitebeard has been worn out by Dustless, so it is possible for him to join forces with other Yonko 4 emperors, such as Red Hair Shanks and the like. The marine headquarters can barely cope with 1 Yonko 4 emperors, and dealing with 2 at the same time is equivalent to a dead end. No matter what, we must let Sengoku publicly execute Fire Fist Ace. This is not up to him. Wuxia said in a low voice, and his tone was more inviolable. The leadership was not in the hands of the warring states from the beginning. He can only go with the flow, and the only way to go against the flow is to die. The more chaotic the world is, the more obvious the opportunities and advantages of Dustless will be. If he wants to seize the dominance of the world, he must first stir up this pool of water so that he can fish in troubled water with peace of mind. Dustless's eyes were shining. Although because of his trouble the Yonko 4 emperors joined forces, the process of history can never be changed. The only headache is how to give Ace to Sengoku. Obviously, Sengoku, who is suspicious by nature, will suspect that Dustless is plotting against him. Ka. At this moment there was a burst of messy footsteps in the corridor. Young Master Straw Hat Luffy has a bounty on him. It was Dustless's personal maid, Boa Hancock. Dustless took the bounty list from Hancock's hand and saw the smiling Monchi D. Luffy. He was quite excited. Straw Hat Luffy defeated Arlong, the leader of the Dragon Pirates, and his bounty was raised to 30 million berries. Hancock explained, somewhat with a hint of astonishment. With a bounty of 30 million berries, a newcomer with a bounty of 3,000 berries for the first time at sea is rare. White Zoo also smacked his tongue. His tone was surprised. Most of the rookies who went out to sea would only have a bounty of 10 to 20 million. There were even a few who had a few million bounties. It was unheard of for someone like Luffy to have a bounty of 30 million on his first mission. He's Garp's grandson. It's normal for the bounty to be exaggerated. Maybe the Marine headquarters knows that he's Garp's grandson. Maybe the bounty will be higher. Dustless said. The name on the bounty list is just Straw Hat Luffy. Maybe the Marine headquarters doesn't know that he's Garp's grandson. Otherwise the bounty may become higher. But Luffy gave me an inspiration. It's a pity that I don't use such a good chess piece. Dustless's eyes were shining. He was worried that there was no way to give Fire Fist Ace to Sengoku. The appearance of Straw Hat Luffy made Dustless unexpectedly see the light of hope. Dustless, Sama is going to give Fire Fist Ace to Sengoku now? White Zoo frowned and asked. Hearing this, Dustless just shook his head. It's a bit early now. He's not the kind of impatient kid. It's not too late to use Luffy after everything is ready. Haste makes waste. Fire Fist Ace, let's ignore him for now. Although White Zoo has been shouting that Ace's injury has healed, Dustless estimated that the kid was actually pretending. He was seriously injured by him, and the bullet with armament hockey penetrated his abdomen. The wound healed extremely slowly. 80% of the time he pretended to be healed, waiting to approach Dustless and take the opportunity to kill him. In this regard, Dustless can only shake his head helplessly. If he was so easy to kill, he would have fallen many years ago. It's that old boy Blackbeard. The thread of discussion suddenly turned, and Dustless pulled the source of the problem to Blackbeard. Seeing that Dustless didn't say anything about Ace's movements, the guy actually ran back to the Whitebeard pirates. It was as if nothing had happened and he was still sitting there as an unknown person. Blackbeard naturally wouldn't be so stupid as to tell Blackbeard about Ace's whereabouts. If that was the case, he wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. The most taboo of the Whitebeard pirates is killing each other. Blackbeard's actions have exceeded the bottom line of what Whitebeard can tolerate. He's still not dead, he's still plotting for Tremor Fruit, Gura Gura no Mi. Dustless is sure that when he finds the right opportunity, Blackbeard will launch a sneak attack on Whitebeard. He's not the kind of person who knows how to be filial to Whitebeard. He won't hesitate to take the opportunity to kill him and replace him. Of course, the biggest reason is to seize Tremor fruit, Gura Gura no Mi. For the Tremor fruit, Gura Gura no Mi, Blackbeard has always been looking forward to it. As long as there is a suitable opportunity, he will grab it. Temporarily hiding, the Whitebeard pirates can avoid being disturbed by others and can also find suitable companions. Blackbeard's ultimate goal is a Yonko for emperors, and the higher pirate king. He naturally can't be alone, so he has to choose the right crew. Rumble. At this moment, an unexpected sound suddenly sounded. Dustless frowned at the den mushy and couldn't help but feel strange. Chapter 686. In the town, the people passing by had a satisfied smile on their faces, and they were working very well, working hard to repair the town that was destroyed because of the fierce fight. Even though they were sweating, they were still happy to work. The spacious sports field was filled with the aroma of roasted meat. Flames were everywhere, and one could clearly see all kinds of livestock being slaughtered. There is no doubt that these are used to celebrate. Prisoners with hideous faces were tied to thick trees. These people's skin was different from human beings. They were blue or dark red, and they had sharp teeth. Their fierce appearance was obviously human. Looking closely, it was Arlong's group of dragon pirates. At this moment, they were all stunned and their eyes were shining, waiting for the Marines who were about to escort them to prison. The reason for the celebration was that Straw Hat Luffy defeated them and liberated the town from the crisis. So these kind and simple people entertained Luffy and others with hard-won wine and meat. Monchidi. Luffy, Reloja Zoro and Sanji, including Nami who had just joined the pirates, were laughing and drinking, eating meat and talking happily. The joy of victory also made them put aside their inner prejudices and be able to integrate well into everything. Poof. Luffy, you know a Marine Admiral. Sanji spat out the barbecue that he ate uncontrollably. He knew that the act of wasting food was shameful, but the restlessness in his heart was still difficult to suppress. I heard Zoro say that that guy seems to be a Marine Admiral. I don't know what he does. Luffy explained while eating the sweeper barbecue. In the blink of an eye, all the barbecue was swept away by the wind. It is indeed a Marine Admiral. I saw it with my own eyes. The youngest and strongest admiral in history. Even if he was only wearing casual clothes at the time, he couldn't escape my eyes, Zoro confirmed with a sip of wine. At the same time, the hands holding the sword also flashed a touch of throbbing. Marine Admiral? That's a super creature at the top of the food chain who can look down on the whole world, the real top power. Compared with Arlong, who was just defeated, there is a complete difference in dimension. Hearing this, Sanji and Nami looked at each other, and in the next second both of them were petrified. They stared at Luffy, who was eating meat, in horror. This guy is simply setting himself on fire and doesn't know how to write the word, death. You know a Marine Admiral and you dare to be a pirate? Sanji and Nami looked at each other and exclaimed in unison. He couldn't help but sweat for Luffy's courage. Knowing a Marine Admiral and daring to be a pirate without fear of death, I'm afraid this is the first time in history. Well, I don't care if that guy is a Marine Admiral or not, I just want to take risks, Luffy said while eating. Nami and Sanji were speechless and tangled for a while. They suddenly regretted that joining this temporary pirate group might be the worst choice in their lives. If the captain was so unreliable, who else could be trusted? I hope that Marine Admiral won't come to us. Sanji and Namua can only pray silently in their hearts, hoping that Dustless will not come to their door. Other admirals may be okay, but if they are targeted by the youngest admiral, they will only end up dead. Over the years, the pirates who have been targeted by him have no choice but to go to Impel Down. Don't show such a surprised expression, he is not as scary as you think. Luffy showed an innocent and brilliant smile, giving people a feeling of peace and tranquility, like a spring breeze, like a panacea, making people feel relaxed. Luffy, you are really optimistic. Sanji felt helpless. When Zoro saw the two of them like this, he just shrugged his shoulders and acted as if it had nothing to do with him. In fact, he had the same expression as Sanji and Nami. Being targeted by a Marine Admiral and still being so optimistic, I am afraid that only Luffy can be so optimistic in the world. That guy doesn't look like a bad guy. Last time I told him that I wanted to be a pirate, he just smiled. Luffy patted his chest and promised. He is indeed not a bad guy, but we are bad guys now, and his job is to capture bad guys like us who commit crimes. Nami rolled her eyes and had a deeper understanding of Luffy's strange thinking. At the same time, she regretted it. Just now she had promised to join the Straw Hat Pirates and be Luffy's navigator. It's too late to regret now. Is a Marine Admiral strong? Even if he comes, I will definitely hit him and won't allow him to hurt my partners. When the word partners was mentioned, Luffy dropped the barbecue in his hand and his face was firm. Partners are even more important to him than life. That was before you had a bounty on your head. As a Marine, he naturally can't hurt innocent people. Don't forget, now you are a pirate with a bounty of 30 million berries. No one in East Blue has a higher bounty than you. The more potential a pirate has, the more likely they are to be the first target of the Marine. Nami's tone was worried. How strong a Marine Admiral is, it's hard to say. In short, he is very strong. An Admiral is the highest battle power in the Marine and is beyond people's imagination. The silent Sanji explained. Red-footed Zeph had once been in the New World and described the horror of Admiral to Sanji. Pointing to Arlong's group who were tied up, Sanji said in a deep voice, maybe he can kill him with just 3 punches and 2 kicks. A mere 20 million pirates is just a small ant in front of an admiral. There is no need to do anything. Zoro, who had been silent all this time, opened his eyes and his eyes shone with a cold light. Maybe it's just a casual glance and I can easily kill that Arlong. There's no need for any extra movements. Meeting a general is enough to scare him out of his wits. Chapter 687. Luffy's eyes widened and his hand that was eating meat stopped. He looked at Zoro in disbelief as if he had seen a ghost. He spent so much effort to defeat the enemy, but Zoro said that an admiral may only need one look to subdue him. He subconsciously looked at his bandaged body, and suddenly felt that the scars on his body were not worth it. Don't think it's an exaggeration, the strength of an admiral is really beyond imagination. Only you don't understand the horror of an admiral. Luffy, you have to figure out that the entire Marine has about hundreds of thousands of people, and there are only 4 admirals. Nami explained. Zoro and Sanji were accustomed to it. They wandered outside all year round and naturally understood it better than Luffy. Gulp. Luffy unconsciously swallowed his breath. Thinking of Dustless's face, Luffy always felt that it was a bit of a fantasy, and he didn't see the slightest shadow of a strong person. He was a little sluggish. Although Luffy was ignorant, he also understood that pirates and Marines were 2 opposing organizations, which also showed that he would have to face terrifying enemies like Dustless in the future. Clenching his fist, for a moment his heart was as heavy as a mountain. Dustless's light smile filled his mind and he couldn't get rid of it. It was like a heart demon that would always stay in his heart. Luffy was not afraid of life and death. The moment he went to sea, he had already put life and death aside. But for the life and death of his companions, he regarded it as important as Mount Tai and would never allow others to hurt them. Hey. Fear like an ant, tremble, the man you are talking about, I have known and fought against him. When the awakened fishman Along heard this, he immediately raised his head to the sky and laughed wildly. His unbridled laughter was filled with unprecedented pleasure, revealing his sharp and pointy teeth, and his voice carried a sharp roar. Luffy saw the mouth full of sharp teeth, his body couldn't help but tremble, his neck subconsciously shrank, and the tingling in his arm instantly eroded all over his body. You want to explore the new world with your current state? Stop daydreaming, you stupid pigs. The fishman Along laughed wildly and taunted, venting the joy in his heart. Whiz. The Tachi was unsheathed, and a sharp cold light whistled out and instantly swallowed the fishman Arlong. Ka. Instantly, countless cold marks appeared on the surrounding walls. Tell me everything you know or else. Zoro's eyes flashed with a cold light as he unsheathed his katana. The threat was self-evident. Now that they are pirates, it is necessary to inquire about the news of the Marine, especially the information of the Admiral. Although it is still far away for them, it is necessary to delve into it. Luffy also dropped the barbecue in his hand, which was a rare sight. The crowd gathered around Along and looked at him, clearly wanting him to explain everything clearly. Do you think I'll submit just because of your murderous eyes? In your dreams. Blue veins appeared on his blue face as Along's face was full of ridicule and disdain. These little brats actually wanted to threaten him, it was simply a fool's dream. Then he looked at the few of them, his eyes glowing with a green light as if he was going to devour them. Suddenly he changed the topic. But since you want to know, I don't mind fulfilling your wishes. Letting you damned humans live in fear every day is also a form of revenge in disguise, keek keek. Sanji's face turned cold when he heard this and his right foot rose from the ground. When he was about to teach him a lesson, Zoro pulled Sanji's body and shook his head to indicate that there was no need to act rashly. It would be too ungentlemanly to see a stray dog. The man you're talking about. With a gloomy face, the fishman Arlong remembered the time when he invaded Mariehua and couldn't help but shudder. After taking a deep breath, he said in a deep voice, That man is an invincible demon. The fishman Arlong said coldly. In the past, Jinbi, Fisher Tiger, and Little Hachi were all annihilated by Dustless's overwhelming strength. The overwhelming power made them unable to retaliate at all. They were like clowns who were being toyed with wantonly. If you are targeted by him, I'm afraid your good days will come to an end, huh? Arlong laughed heartily, and in order to continue to add pressure to Luffy and others, he continued. His strength is beyond your imagination, Admiral. That's just his strength on the surface. I've personally seen how terrifying he is. That man punched and kicked the retired General Z until he was bleeding profusely. The fishman Arlong relentlessly put pressure on Luffy and others. As long as Luffy and others can live in fear, he will be satisfied. How is it possible? How can he be so strong? Sanji sucked in a breath of cold air and said incredulously. I heard that Z was a former Marine Admiral. His strength is beyond imagination. He once fought with One Piece, Roger. If you talk nonsense again, I will kick your head off. Sanji warned fiercely, instinctively thinking that the fishman Arlong was talking nonsense. His sensei Redfoot Zeph had been in the New World before. Although he was just an unknown pirate, Redfoot Zeph was very clear about the New World. Fart, I saw all this with my own eyes. Lying to you? Who do you think you are? Looking at Sanji, the fishman Arlong said disdainfully. This group of guys really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They think that they can do whatever they want with some strength. East Blue may be invincible, but looking at the whole New World, they may not even be cannon fodder for those great pirates. It's ridiculous to think that they are invincible with a mere 30 million berries bounty. Zoro and Sanji and others looked at each other. The fishman Arlong was obviously not lying. The fear and panic that went deep into his bones could not be faked at will. And the fishman Arlong has no need to deceive them. Chapter 688. The fishman Arlong laughed. Although he has been defeated and may end up in prison in the future, he was still happy to be able to mock and intimidate the Straw Hat Pirates. Do you think I'm exaggerating enough? The contemptuous smile on Arlong's face became clearer and he didn't hide it. He said coldly, I can tell you clearly that man is beyond your imagination. You know what will happen if you are targeted by him. Over the years, the people who have been noticed by Dustless have all ended tragically. How can a nobody like you know so much? Nami asked the doubts in her heart. Since Wu Chen's strength was so strong with the identity and strength of Arlong, it was impossible for him to appear in front of Wu Chen. Nobody? Hearing this, the fishman Arlong stared gloomily at Nami, then lowered his head and his eyes changed. He growled. Because he is the most noble and lawless group of people in the world. He is also the biggest garbage of human beings. He is the legendary world dash. I seem to hear you talking about me behind my back. Really, Arlong, you kid, I was kind enough to spare your life, but now you are talking bad about me. The strange voice spread like a ghost into everyone's ears. The sudden voice stopped the fishman Arlong from speaking. It's familiar. Luffy frowned. He always felt that the voice was familiar and subconsciously looked over. What are you doing here? You are not welcome here. Zoro was sweating, his nerves were tense, and his expression was cold as he ordered the expulsion order. The sharp sword in the scabbard was out of the scabbard and he was on guard against the enemy. Such a nervous Sauron caused everyone to freeze. They all looked at the person who had suddenly stirred up the situation. Immediately their eyes widened and the fear in their eyes was clearly visible. The messy hair was messy and the corners of his mouth outlined a faint smile. It was neither evil nor righteous, contradictory and strange. The man in front of them gave a very strange feeling. His face was kind, but there was an invisible ruthlessness. Although there was no breath leaking out, no one noticed when he appeared. Perhaps he had made up his mind to kill Luffy and the others. It's you. Seeing Dustless appear, Luffy showed a kind smile and his careless appearance made Zoro, Sanji and others speechless for a while. This guy doesn't seem to have figured out his position. You don't have to be so nervous. My mission is only to catch the fishman Arlong. You are not in the scope of my mission. Dustless's mouth raised a gentle smile, indicating that they did not need to worry. Your words won't work even if you try to fool a kid. Nami shouted coldly and glared at Dustless. He is telling the truth. You have to believe him. Luffy shouted and immediately jumped out to slap Nami's face. Hearing this, Nami stared at Luffy angrily. She thought that this kid's head was made of elm pimple. She thought that when a marine meets a pirate there is only one end. Either you die or I live. Seriously. You're obviously asking for your own humiliation. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. He could clearly feel that several killing intents were locked on him, and Zoro, who was standing in place, had disappeared like a ghost. Suddenly, Dustless's line of sight suddenly darkened. Such a big sneak attack. You and Hawkeye are really far apart, Zoro-kun. Raising his head and looking up at Zoro, who was falling from the sky, Dustless's mouth raised a contemptuous arc, and then he casually raised his thin right arm. What does he want to do? Sanji, Luffy and others were puzzled and full of confusion. Clang! There was a ripple in the air, and Zoro's sharp sword mercilessly slashed at Dustless. Did he succeed? How is that possible? The joy on his face turned into dullness, and Zoro then roared out in disbelief. This strange scene, which should only be limited to mythological stories, happened in front of his eyes. Looking up, Dustless's face remained unchanged. He resisted Zoro's invincible attack with just one finger. It's just a casual and simple finger. Are you done dancing, boy? Her other hand quietly touched Zoro's face. Her white thumb closed and then she flicked it out lightly. Bang! Boom boom boom. Zoro's face changed dramatically, and he spat out scarlet blood from his mouth. His body flew out like a cannonball and there was a violent explosion. His body smashed several walls in succession. How can he be so strong? He defeated Zoro with just one finger. Is this guy really human? The fear in Nami's eyes was difficult to hide. Dustless's exaggerated offensive stunned all of them. Like Zoro, it was the first time they had seen such a situation in their lives. Bastard, you are not allowed to hurt my companions, otherwise I will also hit you. Compared to the fearful Nami, Captain Luffy took a step forward and stared coldly at Dustless. He lowered the brim of his hat, and the cold light condensed in his eyes was particularly dazzling. Dustless hurt his companions at will, which has indirectly touched Luffy's bottom line. Hit me. I'm sorry, Luffy. With your current strength, it's impossible for you to send me flying. Looking at Luffy's cold eyes, Dustless smiled and said. This smile didn't matter, but in Luffy's eyes, it was a naked provocation, a declaration of war. The whole person disappeared in an instant, and only a black afterimage could be seen, rushing straight to Dustless, and a strong fist greeted Dustless with full strength. Chapter 689. Dustless had a helpless expression on his face, and he cursed Sengoku without hesitation. It was because of him that he was sent here to work hard. The reason was very simple. Capable people do more work. His speed is quite fast, but unfortunately it's far from enough and there are many flaws. Others may not see Luffy's figure, but Dustless can see it clearly. He can clearly see that Luffy is flying towards him in a straight trajectory. His whole body has changed strangely and his arms are stretched without limit. Boom! The air suddenly trembled and ripples visible to the naked eye spread out. Looking up, he saw Dustless casually grabbing Luffy's fist with one hand. His expression was indifferent and calm, as if he had done something insignificant. You can catch me? Luffy, who has always been energetic, couldn't help but look sluggish at this moment. The enemies he had encountered in the past, except for his grandfather, Garp, few people could do this. Let me go. With a loud shout, Luffy began to struggle, twisting his body violently, trying to break free from Dustless's hands, and using all his strength to the limit. The idea is beautiful, but the reality is cruel. Dustless's hands seem to be connected to the earth, and it is impossible to break free easily. After a few breaths, Dustless didn't even move his feet. He stood quietly in the same place, letting Luffy struggle at will. His whole body was as stable as Mount Tai and he couldn't be shaken. Bastard, let go of Luffy, don't underestimate people, we are the entire pirate group. An indignant and unhappy voice came from behind, and then an awe-inspiring hurricane suddenly came. Wuxia turned his head slightly, glanced at the golden-haired young man, and then turned his head again. As if he didn't exist, he ignored him directly. Looking closely, that figure is one of the three major forces of the Straw Hat Pirates, Sanji, who will be called Blackfoot in the future. Let go of Luffy. Sanji's whole body rotated several times in succession, and his black iron-like toes rose from the ground, producing an unparalleled force under the high-speed rotation. Seeing Dustless unmoved, Sanji greeted him mercilessly. Got it. The moment he touched the back of Dustless's head, Sanji was overjoyed. However, before he could be proud for long, a strange energy fluctuation erupted from Dustless's body. A strong repulsive force swept out along with a cold shout. Shinra Tensei. Bang. The unexpected Sanji was no exception. The repulsion eroded his body and his face suddenly became pale as snow, and he immediately flew backward like a kite with a broken string. Coincidentally, he suffered the same fate as Sauron and was easily sent flying. After smashing through several walls, he fell into the ruins, his life or death unknown. Bastard, what did you do to Zoro and Sanji? Seeing that his teammates were easily killed, Luffy roared loudly. His eyes were bloodshot and Luffy's breathing was abnormally heavy. He gasped and stared at Dustless ferociously. He wanted to tear him into pieces. Don't worry, it's just a skin injury. Their physique is very strong and they won't die. Of course, your ability to choose teammates is also unexpectedly strong. Dustless explained softly, his tone was somewhat surprised. As everyone knows, Luffy is a person with a lot of nerves. To put it nicely, he is simple and naive. To put it bluntly, he is an idiot. But his ability to choose teammates is not to be underestimated. In the future, every character of the Straw Hat Pirates will have a high bounty, and even the bounty of all the members will exceed 1.5 billion berries. Whiz. A sharp sound came from the front, and an arm that extended without limit smashed into his face. This time I will definitely hit this bastard. Luffy's face was full of hope. Dustless lowered his head and seemed to be thinking about something. He didn't pay attention to the incoming rubber fist. What surprised Luffy was that the moment he attacked Dustless, he suddenly turned his head and easily avoided the attack. How is this possible? Does this guy have eyes on his head? Nami exclaimed in disbelief. She had seen Wu Chen's every move. Luffy's face was also full of astonishment. His optimistic state of mind couldn't help but be a little frustrated. Dustless remained calm from the beginning to the end. That tranquil gaze silently told him that everything was under control. You are far from your father, Luffy. Dustless's eyes rippled and his tone was full of disappointment. The current Luffy is just a small character. Dustless tried to make himself interested in Luffy, but he couldn't do it. He is too weak, more fragile than any enemy Dustless has fought before. You know my grandfather and my father? When mentioning the word father, Luffy's tone was obviously trembling and hopeful. He hasn't seen his father yet, he hasn't even seen him, and he doesn't even know what he looks like. I don't just know them, but I have a deep relationship with them. Dustless whispered, thinking of the figures of Durag and Garp in his mind. If their strength is calculated in terms of berries, their bounty is at least 800 or 900 million berries. This is also Dustless's personal guess. Today the Yonko 4 emperors. Big's mom has a bounty of 850 million berries. The strength of Durag and Garp can compete with the Yonko 4 emperors. Even Garp's strength is far beyond this number. Although he is now old, his strength is still incredible. Hearing this, everyone on the scene couldn't help but take a breath and stared at Luffy in shock. They didn't expect this silly boy to have such a shocking family background. The strength of his father and grandfather has reached the level of 800 or 900 million bounty. For Nami and others, they are legendary figures. Chapter 690. Luffy's face was also dull, as if his soul had been extracted, his eyes were empty and blank, and his whole person fell into a sluggish state, no different from a sculpture. Obviously, he was also shocked by his deceitful grandfather and the father he had never met before. This is a diversion, deliberately making us take it lightly, don't be fooled. Zoro, who stood up from the ruins, shouted. His eyes were staring at Dustless, and the three swords that were out of their sheaths reflected an invincible sharpness. Looking at the cold gleaming Tachi, there was a burning tingling sensation in his eyes. Make you take it lightly? Hearing this, a sneer appeared on Wu Chen's unchanging face. He said disdainfully, For adults, killing a baby in swaddling clothes is as simple as eating and drinking water. Do you think you can take it lightly? Boring. Zoro's face was even colder. Boom boom boom. There was an explosion in mid-air, and then Sanji broke out of the ground and was attacked by the Shinra Tensei. He was obviously more embarrassed than Zoro, and holes in his bright clothes were everywhere. Is this the strength of an admiral? It's really beyond imagination. Sanji's face was dignified, and even though he tried to suppress it, his whole body still trembled uncontrollably. It's not that he is afraid of Dustless. At the beginning of the road of sea pirates, he has already seen life and death. It's the silent oppression that seems to pierce his soul, and the shadow hidden in his heart can't be waved away. Being stared at by Dustless, even if it's just a casual glance, Sanji has a feeling of soul trembling. But even so, Sanji still refused to give up like a rock. Your problem pirate group is not strong, but everyone's tenacity cannot be underestimated. Dustless's tone was full of praise and admiration. The strength of these people is barely average or even inferior, but everyone's tenacity and courage to fight and refuse to give up are admirable. Don't come over, I'm a rubber man, he can't hurt me, I'll deal with him. Seeing that Zoro and Sanji were about to join forces to attack Dustless again, Luffy quickly stopped them. He is a rubber man and pain is just a concept for him. From childhood to adulthood for about 17 years only Garp can make Luffy feel pain. Dustless's face gradually became cold and his palm was replaced by black steel. His cold eyes looked at Luffy carefully and immediately threw him out mercilessly. Boom boom. The ground couldn't withstand the erosion of the turbulent force and a large pit appeared. Cuff, it hurts. Unprecedented tingling like a tidal wave, and Luffy's face twitched. I'm a rubber man, how can I feel pain? Luffy's tone was filled with surprise and confusion. The only person who could cause him such pain was his grandfather, Garp. Dustless was the second person in his life. Luffy's sissy. Dustless explained. His voice was very soft, but it was so infectious that everyone could hear it clearly. Don't be fooled by him, he is deliberately attacking our confidence. Let's attack him together. Zoro quickly shouted, his tone was full of magic that was difficult to erase, instantly pulling everyone's mind back. Zoro and Sanji looked at each other and immediately rushed towards Dustless. They used to fight one-on-one with others, but now they are facing a strong enemy beyond imagination, so naturally they dare not be arrogant. They can only do their best to fight. Stupid. His eyes turned and a circle of ripples spread out from his eyes. The repulsive force that broke out of his body was unstoppable, like the autumn wind sweeping the fallen leaves. This is a power without substance and it can't be stopped at all. Shinra Tensei. The invisible repulsive force is almost invincible. Bang bang bang. Bang bang bang. With two loud noises in succession, Zoro and Sanji were forced back in an instant. Although they were prepared, they were easily defeated and their expressions were gloomy. No one else can get close to him. Is there any need for this duel to go on? Wanxiang. While the two were contemplating, a gravitational force locked them, and their bodies drifted uncontrollably towards Dustless. Seeing this, Zoro's face turned cold and a cold aura hung on his face. He raised his sword that was sharp enough to cut steel, and with the pull of gravity, the white slash went straight towards Dustless. How many times do I have to say it before you understand? Are you so stubborn that you can't recognize reality? The sharp slash cut through the ground, leaving an indelible mark, crossing layers of space and swallowing Dustless, annihilating him in an instant. In the battle between the strong, it is always those who will not make a sound that will be affected. This kind of fragile attack is useless. Dustless raised his hand, and at the moment of contact he suddenly shot towards the slash with one hand, and the destructive force directly scattered the slash. This is the strength of an admiral. How did he train his body? Zoro swallowed his saliva and said with a trembling voice. His tone was filled with horror. This was the first time he understood the horror of an admiral. He didn't expect the reality to be so absurd and cruel. This was not a battle at all, but an adult playing with a child. There was no comparison between the two sides. Zoro's heart was dead. Dustless only used the power of one hand to easily disperse his strongest slash. This is not a gap in strength. The gap in strength can be made up by teamwork and the number of people. The gap in dimensions is useless no matter how hard they try. Chapter 691. Dustless immediately frowned as if he had noticed something. His eyes were as sharp as a knife, and a cold, killing intent emerged between his eyebrows. He stared at Long, who had already untied the rope, and his killing intent turned into a solid heartbeat. His whole body turned into countless photons and immediately whizzed out. "I'm right in front of you and you still want to run away?" The photons condensed in front of Long and turned into Dustless's figure. His eyes were filled with endless indifference. "I met you 10 years ago. At that time you were the same as now. You didn't make any progress." Shut up, mere human." Fear and panic emerged in Long's ferocious eyes. He recalled Dustless's cruel means after capturing the enemy. Hesitation flashed through his eyes, and his fangs, which were far denser than a shark's, bit toward Dustless's head. These sharp saw-like teeth were enough to easily bite through steel. His power was infinite. "You today are still the same as you were 10 years ago. The result is destined to be the same as 10 years ago," Dustless announced softly, indifferently judging Long's ending. Photons floated on the tip of his foot. In just a blink of an eye, countless rays of light gathered and dyed Dustless's entire calf golden. The condensed force was enough to easily destroy a mountain. Light speed kick. A straight light beam shot out from the leg and instantly wrapped Long's whole body. The earth suddenly trembled. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of explosions rang out and a super-large scale of fire rose into the air. The temperature increased by 100 times in a flash, and the steel bars used to build houses were melted into water. Long, who was in the deep pit, had a tactful luster in his eyes, and his whole body was filled with a burnt smell. "In this life, you can't appear here anymore." Glancing at him, Dustless walked straight toward the Straw Hat group of 4. 3 Swords Stream, 1080 Trouble Phoenix. The powerful slash shot out and hit Dustless in an instant, but the effect was negligible. Dustless, who was bathed in the slash, looked as if nothing had happened, and walked out with an indifferent expression. 10,000 Mammoth Heavenly Attraction. The sudden gravitational force locked onto Zoro, and his body flew uncontrollably towards Dustless. "Bastard, it's this move again." Zoro struggled with all his might but to no avail. He roared unwillingly. He was not a kind-hearted person, and all 3 blades flashed with cold light as they slashed towards Dustless. Naive. Seeing this, Dustless only smiled. He gently lifted his thumb and a light gathered at his fingertip. Although it was very weak, it revealed a sharp light that could penetrate everything. Lasers. The golden light whizzed out in a straight line. It was unstoppable. Pucci. Zoro suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest and he lost all his strength. He couldn't help but loosen his grip on his swords and his expression turned ugly. Looking closely, he saw a burnt bloody hole in his abdomen which was obviously caused just now, and the wound was still smoking. In this case, no matter how strong your vitality is, you will lose your combat power. At best you can only linger on. To be honest, I have fought with as many pirates as there are grains of sand in the Ganges. Pirates like you who have tenacity and refuse to admit defeat are rare. If you have enough time to grow, you will definitely become strong," Dustless said firmly. "Although these people are currently immature fledglings, their strong hearts have already made small achievements, but they lack tempering. So you came to kill us in advance. Marines are really despicable." Zoro tried his best to satirize. Zoro was like a candle in the wind, and the weak candlelight would be extinguished at any time. Boom. After a few breaths, Zoro finally couldn't support himself and fell to the ground, and his forehead was sweating uncontrollably. Green algae head. "You bastard." Seeing that Zoro had lost his movement, Sanji's eyes cracked, and he turned into a storm, and his right calf gathered a majestic force that was enough to easily crush a building. On the surface, he and Zoro were very incompatible, but they cherished each other very much. "You don't have a good memory at all." The powerful calf penetrated Dustless's body, and to Sanji's disbelief, Dustless's whole body was covered in bright photons, and he easily ignored his attack. How is this possible? How can you ignore my attack?" Sanji's tone was full of surprise. It was the first time he had seen such a thing. The Marine Admiral in front of him was too evil. What is this trick? Is he also a ninja? He is different from Luffy and that clown buggy. Thinking of the clown buggy he met a while ago, Sanji's brain stopped thinking for a short time. "I am the shining man who ate the shining fruit. My body can be naturalized and only people with hockey can touch my strength. Of course, some weird devil fruit users can also do it. Dustless explained in a low voice. Just like the dark fruit, even if the host itself does not have hockey, it can attack the devil fruit users. In addition, the same is true for the surgeon fruit. If you are done attacking, then it's my turn. His plain eyes were incomparably awe-inspiring, shooting out a cold chill. Dustless's whole body erupted with an unimaginable oppressive momentum, and the same move as the previous attack on Fishman Arlong, his calf turned golden in an instant. Unexpectedly, they were hit by the light head-on. Light speed kick. As Dustless' voice fell, the whole ground trembled violently and burst open like paper scraps. The charred Sanji could not move and had lost his will. You're the only one left, Luffy. And don't stare at me so ferociously. Turning his head, Dustless saw Luffy looking at him unkindly. He smiled in relief. I made you realize your own weakness and see your own limits. Therefore you can train desperately without thinking about your own safety. You should thank me. Chapter 692. Luffy glared furiously, his little face twisting violently. It was even to the extent that due to his excessive rage, his entire body was like the crater of a volcano that had gone berserk. His entire body was suffused with an indescribable blazing heat that intended to incinerate everything into nothingness. You're asking for trouble. I said that the target was not your pirate group, but you didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The strength of an admiral is not something you can touch now. Dustless made an indifferent look. He said that he came because of Arlong. But you hurt my companions. Luffy didn't appreciate it. Dustless had hit Sanji and Zoro in succession, which had already touched his bottom line. He valued the safety of his companions more than his own life. So what, as a marine, it's already a great gift not to kill them. Dustless didn't care and his tone was somewhat magnanimous. The pirates they encountered in the past were just a face-to-face encounter and their bodies were separated from their bodies. Although Sanji and Zoro were seriously injured and had fainted, they were still able to save their lives, which was already a special treatment for them. Humph. You really don't know what to do. Seeing Luffy's eyes become more piercing, Dustless knew that his previous muscle show was in vain, and he couldn't make this guy retreat. Not only that, but it also aroused the wildness in his heart. Luffy, the gap between us is too far. It's difficult to make up for the gap between us by pure passion. Dustless said lightly. Even if the crawling creatures on land had wings, they would not be able to touch the eagles that were flying, let alone fight them. Less nonsense. Luffy, who was angry, completely ignored the words and raised his palm to Dustless, his eyes as cold as ice. Although he is familiar with Dustless, Luffy will not let go of the person who hurts his companions. Rubber pistol. The extremely tough arms stretched without limit and almost instantly, it was close to Dustless and smashed towards his stomach. Bang. With a loud bang, a smile appeared on Luffy's small face. He was sure that he had hit Dustless. The soft feeling of a human's abdomen was not a lie. However, the Dustless in front of him was as calm as a breeze. I clearly hit him, so why does he still look like nothing happened? Luffy's face was sluggish and his mind was blank. He had attacked with all his strength, but Dustless was unscathed. What a pity your strength is too weak. Dustless patted the corner of his wrinkled clothes and said without a change in expression. Just as Luffy thought, his attack did hit Dustless, but it felt like a soft fist to Dustless. Felt like he was just scratching an itch. Not only did he not feel any pain, but it also made Dustless's body itch. The gap between them was too big and the current Luffy was too weak. His strength was only at the level of a pirate with a bounty of 4,000 or 5,000 berries. Dustless felt bored when he thought about it. Rubber machine gun. The dense rain of bullets fell on Dustless and eroded his whole body, but Dustless still stood in the same place and his feet never moved. He was as tall and majestic as Mount Tai. Not only did he not feel pain, but because of Luffy's attack, his slightly itchy body was extraordinarily comfortable for a moment. Hey, why did you suddenly stop? After a while, Dustless looked at Luffy, who was as tired as a dead dog with his tongue hanging down, and asked in disappointment. Then he looked up at the gray sky. The setting sun in the distance had gradually dimmed and was about to sink into the sea. It was obviously not too late. It's time to end it. Retracting his gaze and staring at Luffy, Dustless's body turned into lightning and swept out. Because the speed of light was too terrifying, Dustless made a harsh roar every time he moved. That sharp whistling sound caused people to feel dizzy. In just the blink of an eye, Dustless descended from the sky, crossing layers of space and easily came to Luffy, grabbing Luffy's throat like a rabbit. In this way you won't have the ability to fight back. Black skin gushed out of the slender little hand and instantly eroded the whole arm. Pain, 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 it hurts. Luffy struggled with all his might. He grabbed Dustless's right arm and punched with all his might. However, it was as if his fist was made of steel. It made a crisp sound of boom boom boom. From Dustless's indifferent face, it was not difficult to see that the effect was negligible. The attack covered with armament hockey. Even if you are a rubber man you will feel pain. Armament hockey is the natural enemy of all ability users, and no ability user is an exception, and you are the same. No ability user of any system is immune to armament hockey. Although Luffy is a rubber man, he will feel pain when attacked by armament hockey. Let me go. Luffy gritted his teeth and roared. When Luffy was stuck like this, he realized that he was like a lonely boat in the ocean. There was no need for stormy waves, just a trivial breeze could easily overturn him. An unprecedented unwillingness poured into his heart. His eyes locked on Dustless, strong resentment broke out of his body, and the appearance of killing intent was particularly strange. Don't make such a scary expression, it will only make you more powerless. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He had seen too many of this kind of protesting and unwilling eyes. It was tantamount to a fantasy to change the reality of a fiasco. Let go of Luffy. The sluggish Nami picked up the rusty steel pipe and ran toward Dustless. The fear in her eyes was clear, but her face was firm.